So let me tell you a story about how I lost my embarrassment in junior high. As a tween, I used to live in my creek. I'd read a book called My Side of the Mountain, and it was about a kid who had run away. Since I didn't have a great home life, the idea of being out in the wilds on my own, only responsible for myself, it really bonded to me. I used to hunt and fish and be quite the survivalist. Well, inevitably that meant that I was going to get poison oak. Well, it gets worse and worse for some people each time they get it. For me, it tended to do the opposite. First, I got it on the right side of my body. Then I managed to get it on the entire left side of my body. And then after that, I was practically immune. This one time, a dog chased me through a field of it, probably 50 feet long, and I only got a few flecks here and there. Then it happened. I woke up one morning with an itching and a burning sensation in the only place I hadn't ever gotten it before. I still have no idea how I managed to get it there. I assume it involved public urination. But I jumped out of bed, pulled my underwear down, and was both shocked and terrified by what I saw. It was huge. If you've ever had a fat lip and had things swell to comical proportions, you'll have some idea of what I was going through. I was like 3 to 4 times normal human size. As a panicked 14-year-old who had just woken up, I wasn't exactly thinking rationally. I looked down and imagined the first thing the doctor would say is amputation, before I'd even had a chance to put it to its God-intended purpose. But I wrapped myself in the cooling relief of a wet wash rag, stuffed that and my comically swollen self into a pair of pants, and ran upstairs to get my mom. I explained to her in my near tearful and utterly panicked voice, we had to go to the emergency dermatologist. Now. She, of course, tried to ask me some questions and was getting very vague answers, but could tell by the urgency and probably a very large bulge that something was going on of a delicate nature. That turned out to be the longest 15-minute drive of my life. I sat there, squirming, trying not to scratch, contemplating life, waiting for the doctor's office to arrive. So after a mumbled discussion between my mom and the nurse, and a mercilessly long wait, I was finally taken back and put in a room to see the doctor, who came in with his rather attractive nurse and said, "Let's see the damage." At this point, I pulled down my pants, took off the towel, and the doctor took a step back and said, "Oh my!" It's never a good sign when medical professionals gasp and lose their composure, but he did. He said, "That's the worst case of poison oak I've ever seen." But the treatment was even more humiliating. He told me to get up on the table with my pants off, put my feet in the stirrups, and he proceeded to use UV light to bake my good bits. Since the treatment was going to take 10 or 15 minutes, he left. But he didn't close the door all the way, and gravity kind of let it creep open more and more. So I'm wildly reaching to try to close the door, but I can't reach. My feet are kind of up and I'm in an awkward position. And there are people walking by and I can hear voices and things like that. So I did the only thing I could. I took the towel that I was using as a pillow and covered my face and laid back, under the theory that if I couldn't see them, then they couldn't see me, or at least they wouldn't be able to recognize me in a lineup, unless it was a rather peculiar kind of lineup. I did hear some occasional gasps as people walked by, but for the most part it was over pretty quickly, and the doctor came back in, apologized for leaving the door open, gave me some industrial calamine lotion, and sent me home and said I'd be fine in a week or two and come back if there were any complications. My feeble little imagination couldn't imagine any complications worse than the symptoms I was already having. But I was gleefully on my way, and the worst was over, or so I thought. Turns out the humiliating part was yet to come. This had all happened on a Thursday, and the following Monday was the first day of school, my first day of 9th grade. So I had gone there perfectly okay, not worrying about anything, and had gone through the day just fine. Done PE, and then realized mandatory showers. In a panic, I tried to plead with the coach, trying to explain to them that no, I'm not really bashful, but I had a medical issue and I really should skip the shower today. But he was having none of it. It was that or take an F on my first day and get sent to the vice principal's office. So there wasn't much I could do. I just kind of had to go with it. And it turns out that when you bake certain parts that don't see a lot of sun under a UV lamp for 15 minutes, they really absorb it. I had like an inverse tan and I was pretty dark from being out in the creek all summer. On top of that, the swelling hadn't gone down, so I was still like 2.5 times normal size. But at least I had confidence that boys wouldn't be caught dead making eye contact with that particular part of the anatomy. So I confidently walked down my aisle towards the shower when a 7th grader just busted out in tears. Now in hindsight, that was probably over his own public humiliation of his first public shower. But at the time, I thought what was going through his mind is, oh my God, look at the freak with the giant black genitals. So a little horror and embarrassment is setting in on my side, but I'm hustling to the shower and hoping that everybody will be so focused on washing themselves that that'll be the end of it. And I quickly get sudsy and have got my head under the water, and I peek out, and there are 5 kids staring there, openly slack-jawed, looking at my junk. I finish up, brush off, dry off, get dressed, and get out of there as quick as possible, knowing that, well, at least no kid would openly talk about that. Oh, how wrong I was. It turns out that teenagers like to gossip, and especially about things like this, because when I would walk the halls, girls would look at me, get a shocked look on their face, and immediately head the other way. And my social experiences of 9th grade seemed to mimic that experience. It turned out that most girls didn't want to get a reputation for dating the kid with the giant mutant black genitals, and the few that might have considered it kind of scared me a little bit. And for a while after that, every time I'd take a shower, there would be a bunch of people hanging out, just waiting to see my junk. But there was a sort of karmatic justice. It turns out that while the color lasted all year, the swelling went down within a few weeks. So I was still the kid with the black genitals, but not the giant black genitals. So those kids that had described me as huge then had to deal with their own sort of reputations, shall we say. Eventually, I got through 9th grade, and then started a new school in 10th. And slowly the trauma of this event had faded into the past. Until years later, when friends and I are out drinking, and everyone is telling stories of their most humiliating experiences from high school, I tried to wait for mine to be last, and then told them my story. I was quite proud of being able to publicly share that and get over the shame of the past, and having my friends absolutely rolling in tears, when one of my friends said, "That's nothing, I have it beat." And for the next few minutes he regaled us with his story of public horror and humiliation, and he won. But that's a story for a different time. But still, while I wouldn't wish the experience on anyone, it did leave me with a superpower. I had experienced 9th grade as gigantic black genital boy, and after that I would forever have the power of brazen shamelessness.